I will call this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. Madam Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Betry, Ms. Bindum,
Here.
Mr. Fell,
Here.
Mr. Fitch,
Here.
Mr. Hopkins,
Here.
Mr. Otto, Mr. Storr,
Here.
Mr. Trail.
We do have a quorum tonight, so that's good news. Are there any changes to the agenda? Approval of the minutes of June 4th. I take it that June 11th are not ready. Okay, so June 4th, approval of the minutes.
I will move we approve the minutes of June 4th.
That would be appropriate, Mr. Feld. Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hopkins. I assume there are no changes to the minutes, as they are rather sparse. So could we get a voice vote on the minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, the minutes are approved. Any communications? We have two continued public hearings that we will consider at the same time. We've got Plan Case 2259 M15, a request to rezone the property at 703 North Matthews Avenue from R2 single-family residential to R4 medium-density multifamily residential. We've also got Plan Case 2260 SU15, request by See You at Home for a special use permit to allow a home for adjustment women's shelter at 703 North Matthews in the multifamily residential zoning district. So if we could have staff, do we have a staff presentation?
Yes.
All right.
Just want to be sure we came to that part of the agenda.
I think we did.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Marks.
So this case is two different requests. The first request is for a rezoning of the property at 703 North Matthews from R2 single-family residential to R4 medium-density multiple-family residential. And it is also a request for a special use permit at the site to operate a home for adjustment, women's shelter, transitional housing for women at the site. So the subject property is located at 703 North Matthews in the northwest part of Urbana, close to the King Park neighborhood. In a mostly residential neighborhood, it is a single-family home located on a block next to the Crisis Nursery, which offers daycare services and social services for families and mothers. That house in the photo just to the northwest of the subject property is worth noting that that has since been demolished. It's the only home within that on that block, and then separated by the alley, which has been vacated, and then to that property to the north, which will become under the acquisition of Crisis Nursery. But See You at Home is an organization that provides social services for the city's disadvantaged populations, people who are on the brink of homelessness or struggling to find work. One of those services that they would like to provide is a transitional home for women that allows them to a place to live where they might have a chance to avoid falling to homelessness, where they could live for anywhere from 3 to 4 months to 6 months and get back on their feet and self-supporting again. The issue with this property is that it is zoned R2. Most of the surrounding neighborhood is also zoned R2, and the type of use that they're requesting is not allowed in the existing district. They are therefore requesting a rezoning of the property from R2 to R4, medium-density multiple-family residential zoning, which allows the use of a home for adjustment, as we call it in the table of uses in the zoning ordinance, with a special use permit. So these applications are being considered at the same time. The request for the special use permit is dependent upon the rezoning request to be granted. So just to quickly go back to the neighborhood, it's near the railroad tracks and a substation to the south. Presence Hospital is also located directly to the south as well. To the east and to the northeast and somewhat to the north are single-family homes. To the west is northwest is Crisis Nursery, and a little beyond west across Romine Street are some commercial properties that are used for storage. And you have single-family homes mostly to the northwest of there as well. And so most of that is zoned R2. The hospital to the south is zoned B3, as well as the storage properties a little bit on the at the next block. And the future land use of these properties, most of the surrounding area is zoned for residential. The area to the south and to the west, as well as the properties with the Crisis Nursery, is zoned for institutional. So the subject property is a single-family home that, for just a quick history, that was moved to the site in the late 80s, early 90s. It was relocated to the site. It was occupied for many years. It has been vacant for the better part of the last decade. The applicant is in the process of being ready to acquire the property, to where they would make physical improvements on the house, improving the exterior, as well as making the inside suitable for habitation. They would like to offer a place where women who are having hard times may live with assistance and services to get back on their feet, get employed again, shelter for them so they can move on to being self-supporting again. The request would be to have no more than 8 women at any given time. There would be no physical changes to the site or to the exterior of the building. It would mainly be kept in its current form. There would be some physical improvements made on the inside that would allow it to house women. In the upstairs, there would be 2 different bedrooms with a capacity for 3 and for 4 women. Those standards meet our building and safety standards for cohabitation of unrelated individuals for a rooming house, which this would be considered. So there'd be 2 bedrooms and then a common area, a restroom facility. On the first floor, there would be a dining room, some kitchen, family room, some meeting space, and then 1 bedroom on the first floor that might possibly be arranged to have a hospital bed for someone who might need some more careful medical attention. When my discussions with the applicant, that was still sort of preliminary, not permanent, but a possibility that they were examining for their plans for the space. So within their request to install it, they have applied for a rezoning request, and the reason that they requested R4 was that the way that our zoning ordinance is set up is that the different zones are designed to identify different intensity of uses, as seen in the R2 and the R4 zoning descriptions. R4 is the least intensive use that this site could be zoned to that would allow it to apply for a special use permit for this sort of use. So with that said, the rezoning cases are take into account the Illinois Supreme Court case of LaSalle National Bank versus County of Cook, in terms of coming up with a list of factors that are paramount in evaluating the legal validity of a zoning classification for a particular property. The first classification, the existing land uses and zoning of the nearby property, in which are they compatible with existing land uses and land regulations for the immediate area. Staff evaluation is that it is most very well compatible because it still maintains a residential use. It does not have a significantly greater intensification of use for that property in regards to the surrounding area. It's also worth noting that it's compatible with the social service nature of the property to the northwest, Crisis Nursery as well. And it's also worth mentioning that the home acts as a sort of, the home as well as the nursery act as a somewhat of a buffer between the railroad and the hospital and the commercial properties to the west, which are heavier in intensity as well as use. So it does sort of fulfill a kind of a buffer or a somewhat of a transition to those properties. The next criteria is the extent to which the property values are diminished by the restrictions of the ordinance. The property has been vacant for several years, so it's eliminating a potentially blighted property or a vacant property, which sometimes has the potential for attracting problems. Not to say that there have been any issues associated with this particular property, but at one point it was on a list of consideration for properties that could potentially be demolished for a blight reduction program that the city was doing through its grants department. So it would not affect values in the sense that it would at least be improving the property, and it would be eliminating a vacancy with an occupancy. Although it should be noted that this is not a professional appraisal, and so this is not necessarily an official appraisal of the property. The next two criteria: the extent to which the ordinance promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public, and which is also related to the fourth one, the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed on the individual property owner. It's not of our opinion that this would jeopardize the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public in the sense that it is assisting with, a social service for allowing women who are in trying to seek housing, but also it would enable the petitioner to fulfill their mission of providing assistance for people in dire economic situations. It would also bring, as I mentioned earlier, bring back a use for an otherwise vacant parcel. The hardships imposed on the property or the surrounding area would not be much more significant than the existing conditions. It should be worth noting that the Crisis Nursery Center recently had a conditional use permit approved for an expansion of their facility. Part of that is greatly increasing their existence of off-street parking. That's strictly related to Crisis Nursery's operation, but just to note that any volume of traffic in the area was accounted for under that plan. This plan would be in regards to 8 individuals, some of whom are not necessarily likely to have automobiles or transportation, but not as significant of an increase in volume as might exist otherwise. And it would also support the comprehensive plan goal for infill development, and it also, as I said, fulfills a vacancy of the last several years. The last criteria is the suitability of the subject property for the zone purposes, and that's if the certain features of the property or that location are favorable to the rezoning and the proposed use. Well, the applicant would like the site because of the ease of which they're able to acquire it, but also its close location to the hospital in regards to being able to provide medical care, as well as its close location to public transportation that's provided on University Avenue as well. And I'm sorry, one more criteria. The length of time the property has been vacant as zoned considered in the context of land development in the area in the vicinity of the subject property, basically to show why has the property been vacant for a significant period of time because of any existing restrictions in the area. The area has not necessarily seen a assertive development in single-family homes. If anything, there have been efforts to preserve the housing stock of single-family homes in that area, as well as reducing potential blight from vacant properties or challenged properties, structurally challenged properties. So this would not. So I think this would be appropriate given that the vacancy over the last several years. The other criteria that's worth considering for the special use permit in the zoning ordinance, that the proposed use is conducive to the public convenience at that location. It is conducive in the sense that it's still preserving a housing-related use for the residential nature of the site. Also, its proximity to nearby churches, the medical center, public transit, its proximity to areas where CU at Home provides lots of their outreach. Secondly, that the proposed use is designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that it will not be unreasonably injurious or detrimental to the district in which it shall be located, or otherwise injurious or detrimental to the public welfare. It's of our opinion that it would not be injurious or detrimental to the district in which it lies. It provides safety and support for women who are at risk, as opposed to leaving them exposed without housing. It also improves the existing structure. It provides some needed maintenance as well. I thought I'd just bring up a picture that better sort of graphs the condition of the site than maybe what was provided in the memorandum. The traffic would not be significantly increased too much from the area. The parking requirements for what the applicant has requested would be 3 off-street spaces. We put a condition in the approval of the special use permit that they would have to provide 3 off-street spaces on their parcel, or work out an arrangement of a parking plan within 600 feet of the property that's subject to the review of the zoning administrator and the city engineer. So that allows them the flexibility of an arrangement with another party or providing their own parking. But the volume of traffic realistically is probably not going to be greatly increased from individuals who are in a tight economic situation as it is. The third criteria, the proposed use conforms to the applicable regulations, standards, and preserves the essential character of the district in which it shall be located. Like I mentioned previously, it preserves a residential nature of the property. It wouldn't deviate too differently from the social services aspect that are offered from the crisis nursery just to the west of the property. And it would not be increasing the building footprint. It would merely be maintaining and preserving the existing structure. So both cases must be approved by the Plan Commission, and their recommendation is then sent to the City Council for approval as well, because a rezoning request as well as a special use permit must be approved by both with a recommendation from the Plan Commission as well as City Council. So with those findings, it's for Plan Case 2259 M15 and Plan Case 2260 SU15, based on the evidence provided, staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward the special use permit application as well as the requested rezoning to the Urbana City Council with a recommendation of approval with the following conditions. The site conforms to the general layout as submitted in this application. The site is not redeveloped to a higher density, and the home does not exceed the maximum allowable occupancy of 8 residents and 1 staffer as proposed in this application. And lastly, that the site provides on-site parking spaces or makes accommodations within 600 feet of the subject property with a parking plan subject to the review and approval of the zoning administrator and city engineer. One more aspect that I wanted to mention that I think would be neglected to not mention is that the applicant is also doing this in partnership with the covenant, with a covenant that would that has performed this sort of outreach before. So it's CU at Home is the applicant, but it's part of a partnership as well. So with that, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Marks. Any questions for Mr. Marks? Mr. Hopkins?
The Crisis Nursery is on parcels zoned R2.
Yes.
It is a conforming use on
Yes.
those? Okay. And
Actually, just to clarify, it's a conditional use, and they have their approvals.
But yeah, okay, but it is not a non-conforming use.
No.
That's true.
You mentioned that they were expanding parking or whatever. Who-
Yes.
Who owns the two parcels just east of them that are now both vacant?
Presence owns those, and Presence plans, is it called Presence now? Am I getting that, or Pravina? Whichever, sorry.
The hospital.
They will be.
I sympathize, but I
yeah.
know what you mean.
Let me just go to the map just to, I know where you're referring to.
Those two
Yes.
parcels.
They own, I believe, the one just to the east, and then the next one will be donated. They are expanding eastward.
Onto those two parcels.
Well, they're expanding mainly right here, and then they're reestablishing their playground right there.
Okay, all right. And the triangle immediately west of the parcel we are considering, who owns that parcel?
I believe that's still owned by the hospital.
Okay. So the presumption is that by leaving those R2, we are not precluding their use.
Well,
Let me put it differently. Did staff consider whether rezoning should apply to anything other than this single parcel, which from a quick graphic inspection seems odd?
staff considered that, I mean, the applicant can only apply for rezoning the property which is theirs. It's also in the interests of most of the northern parcels are spoken for by the operation of Crisis Nursery and will be there for the near future. They're awkward parcels to say the least. That triangle one is awkwardly placed. That alley's been vacated, so it only has access on that narrow end of Romine as well.
Well, and you're talking about the alley along the railroad track has been vacated, yes?
No, that alley is part of the railroad. That's not
Okay, so when you say alley, you're talking
the one that
about-
strikes through the center. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the property to the west has
And it's been vacated, and now that Presence, in its presence, is owner of all those parcels, it's been vacated and therefore now belongs to Presence.
just the one. It was potentially at one point probably going to be used for parking, but I don't think that's.
No, but it's been vacated.
Yeah, the alley's been
City
vacated.
given up its right of way.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay, I misunderstood which piece was actually.
Okay, yeah.
considered the alley. Okay.
Mr. Fell?
In the past, the city's been, well, first, I don't want to have read into this question a negative aspect of the petitioner's request, but in the past, the city has been not necessarily in favor of spot zoning a piece of property. And as I see it, if we rezone the property, even though the petitioner's intent is to keep the house, they could tear down the house and put something vastly different on that piece of property because it's now zoned R4. Does staff have a concern about that?
Well, the condition of the special use also keeps a cap on their allowable volume of residents at the property, as well. Or are you addressing the concern that they tore down that they
Well,
might
my
hypothetically that they
the
tear
gist
down?
of my question is, even if we approve both of these plan cases, the petitioner eventually, or they could sell the lot, could ignore the special use permit and by rights build something big under R4,
That is-
larger under R4.
That is a potential, but it's also could it be at a condition that, or
I guess I'll just point out that that kind of zoning is appropriate in that location for one of the points that we mentioned earlier, and that's to provide that buffer between the lower density residential and the more intense industrial and commercial zoning. So yes, in a perfect world, perhaps that whole triangle should be upzoned a bit, but that's not what's under your, what the request is today. We don't think that's spot zoning. It does provide that buffer. It would be appropriate to upzone the other piece if it was requested, we would consider it.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Marks? Mr. Storr?
Did I notice a shallow well or cistern on the property?
I don't believe so, but I can scroll down to.
Immediately kind of to the west, northwest of the house, and immediately down.
The applicants are in the audience. Perhaps they could address that.
Yeah, the property owner as well as the applicants are here and able to answer that question if it.
Okay,
if you'd
well,
like.
we'll try to get that later.
Okay.
Further questions for Mr. Marks? Thank you, Mr. Marks. All right, let me briefly outline the procedures for public hearing. Staff has presented a summary of their case. Petitioner will now present evidence. Other proponents of the request may be heard. Opponents of the request can present evidence and ask questions of the petitioner through me. Others may be heard on the case. City staff may be allowed for clarification. Petitioner may rebut but not introduce new evidence. Opponents may rebut but not introduce new evidence. Petitioner can then summarize the case, and then we will close the public hearing and discuss the case and possibly vote on the case. So if the petitioner would like to address us at this time, that would be great. And if you could just state your name for the record, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. I'm Melanie Jackson, the Executive Director of See You at Home. And we appreciate your time and energy devoted to making this decision for us. See You at Home has been in existence for a little over 4 years in our community, and we currently have 2 homes, just acquired a third one, so by the end of August we will have 3 transitional homes that have been in use. A total of one of them has been in use for 3.5 years. One is for men who are in recovery, and that capacity is 6. Another is for a family, 1 or 2 parent family with children, and we've had that in use for just under 1 year. And the new home that we just acquired is going to be for 2 single women. We provide professional case management and professional counseling on a weekly basis. Those who are in our current 3 houses are required to have at least part-time employment. They save half of their money for when they complete the program, which is 6 to 12 months in our current houses. And I believe we've seen a good deal of success in the folks that we've worked with. Unfortunately, just this morning we had the memorial service for one who didn't make it, who passed away this weekend. But See You at Home is an organization that's committed to helping folks take steps forward. We have a significant amount of experience and folks involved from a peer standpoint, those who have been on the street, those who have been in shelters, those who are actively in recovery, who are on staff helping us. And we believe that this addition of a place for 8 women to live in a supportive transitional environment would be a huge asset to the community, to the county as a whole. If you speak with other service providers who help those who are homeless or who are at risk of becoming homeless, you'll quickly hear that there is a huge need for helping women. This particular house will be for women without children or without current custody of their children. It will just be for single women. And it will be a transitional supportive environment similar to our other houses. And we believe that this location has many advantages, including the collaboration with sisters who are a part of the Presence hospital network. That's our partnership. It's in their front door. It seems as though this space has been ordained for this use. So I thank you for your consideration.
Any questions for Ms. Jackson? Mr. Storr?
Did I notice a cistern or shallow well on the property?
There is no cistern or well on the property.
There was a concrete slab near the house.
It used to have a shed on it. The shed has been torn down.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. Any other proponents of the petition wish to speak to the Plan Commission? Any opponents of the position wish to speak to the Plan Commission? Anybody else wish to speak to the Plan Commission? Yes, please, if you'll please approach the mic and state your name, that would be most helpful.
Name is Audra Owens, and I tried to write as fast as I could for some of these questions, or some of the information that you were giving us. What I want to find out is that provided 3 off-street parking spaces, is that going to be on the, not the rectangle that they show where you're expanding the playground, but further up?
I'll direct
So-
that to city staff.
Well, it would have to be provided on the parcel, which is, in this picture, it's very rectangular.
I'm
So it-
aware,
it-
but so, and, okay, the other one was,
Let the record
what do you mean by
reflect that Ms. Pearson
vacating
is
the
pointing at the
alley?
map.
Sorry, I thought it.
No, there's just a house.
Yeah, let's get the,
Oh, that's okay. You're talking about that triangle that's over there by the tracks, behind the house?
No, that's not property that'd be accessible. So yeah, where that area, where the yellow square that's highlighted, if they were to provide parking for themselves, that would be just within the south within that space. They would have the option. This was their prerogative. The Crisis Nursery is also expanding their parking along that alleyway to the east. They're going to have, or former alleyway. They're going to provide as many as 50 spaces for their operations. So I mean,
50 is what I
50
just
spaces.
heard. So,
Yeah.
I've seen that, I mean, I've lived around that parcel forever, and 50 cars, and not all of them cars, some SUVs, some trucks, and you're going to put 50 there? Or they're
Yes.
going to put 50 there?
Well, it's related to it. That's related to a different case. It's already been approved, but
yeah, I think that's not before us tonight. 50 sounds like a lot, but the case really centers around what are we going to do with the 3 spaces that they're going to be required to provide. And as I read the recommendation, the condition is that they either must provide 3 on this space where it says SFR and it's surrounded by the yellow, or they have to provide 3 through some kind of arrangement that's within 600 feet of this parcel. Now,
correct.
I think Mr. Marks is suggesting it could be in the space where Crisis Nursery plans to expand.
that's just an
Their
example
parking.
of an arrangement that they
It wouldn't
might-
have to be there. It could be, I guess it could be on the other side of the railroad tracks even.
It has to
I don't
be-
think that makes sense.
It has to be within 600 feet of the parcel. So
Okay, and the upper on the east side on the right is where my mother lives, so that's within the 600. So we're not talking about that side at all?
well, no, we're I mean you're with the property owner. It would be an agreement, not a forced parking issue
An agreement?
between the
Mhm.
2 property owners, between the home and the.
If, for instance, there was a business down the street that had extra parking already built, and they didn't need to use it, they could then say to See You at Home, would you be willing, or would you like to rent 3 of our spaces, for instance?
Okay.
So it would be a mutual agreement to do that. It wouldn't be that See You at Home is trying to, park anywhere.
And not increase traffic on North Matthew right there? So, because last time something like this came up, all of a sudden we had a boatload of parking spaces, or not parking space, but cars all along Matthews, all going toward the U of I. And so I was just wondering if traffic was going to, since we've got 50 parking spaces, if traffic was going to increase on that end of the street.
Well, the 50 parking spaces aren't related to this use. It's of our opinion that the volume related to the traffic volume would not be significantly increased based on 8 women living in this home, some who might or might not of which own an automobile. They're just required to provide, according to our, the code in our zoning ordinance, they're required to have at least 3 off-street parking spaces in case any one of them does have a car or uses a car.
Okay, does vacating the alley mean that how the cars are going to leave Crisis Nursery?
No, it means it once was city property, and the city gave up their property to the owner of those parcels, which is it Crisis Nursery that owns them?
Yeah, Crisis Nursery will own all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Is in the process of acquiring the 3rd one to the farthest east.
Okay.
So essentially, the alley should be considered a private driveway, I guess.
Right.
private driveway.
And this happened some time ago. Yeah, several years ago.
And I think my last question is in regards to what I was hearing, that once that house is bought or the ownership is officially settled, what is going to stop that house from being torn down and something like a multifamily apartment building being built on that?
Actually, that was Mr. Fell's point, and if we approve this rezoning, there's nothing that could stop that. If we rezone this to R4, this, See at Home may do exactly what they say they're going to do. The house may operate for a period of 50 years, or longer, but then at some point they could decide to sell the parcel. Somebody else could buy it and want to put a multifamily up there. They could do that by right. They wouldn't need a special use permit, and they could build an apartment building as large as the zoning ordinance allows for this size of a property in the R4 zoning district.
Final question. What is it going to, or how is it going to benefit the people who live in that neighborhood?
That's something for us to discuss when we go to deliberation.
Do any of you live in that neighborhood?
I do not live in that neighborhood.
So what are you going to discuss?
We're going to discuss, to the best of our judgment, and with your input, whether we think it's going to harm the neighborhood. And if you think it could harm the neighborhood, and sounds like you might think that, then please let us know how you feel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, ma'am. Did you have a question, Mr. Storr? I'm sorry.
Just
You've expressed an awful lot of concern about traffic, and we had a similar circumstance next to our house where a residence was torn down and an apartment house was put up with parking and so forth. Can I assume that, or do you have concerns about that you'd like to state at this time?
right now, I live 2 blocks up from your proposed rezoning, and I'm on Beslin. We are getting a lot of traffic on there, shootings, whatever all else. So I'm assuming that if you're going to be doing something like this, it's going to be increased police presence and things like this. There's nothing that says that it's improving the neighborhood for me. It's saying that it's providing housing, which is really admirable. It's providing housing for women who need housing, and again, admirable. But it's not showing me one thing that it's doing for the existing residents of those neighborhoods, myself included.
What do you think about the vacant house there? Is that something
If it
of a
stayed there as a landmark, a historical landmark, I think as long as they didn't change the exterior, fine. But if there's no guarantee that that's not going to eventually be knocked down and multifamily housing goes up, and once multifamily family goes up, then the rest of those little neighborhoods, the houses in the neighborhood go down, we're no longer a neighborhood. And I would really like to stay there for another 30, 40, 50 years. I grew up there. It was a really nice area, but the influx of more people with different agendas has changed it. And I just want to make sure that my mother can sleep comfortably, I can sleep comfortably, that housing for the women, and again, admirable, does not bring in an unsavory element with it. Because if it's for, I don't know, if it's for women who are being chased, something might come back, hurt us. I just need to know how it is going to help our neighborhood. I need to know how it's going to help.
All right, do we have any further questions, or do you have any further points to make? We'll certainly discuss that when we get to discussion. Thank you for your concerns and your commentary. Does anyone else wish to address the Plan Commission on this case? Okay. The petitioners wish to readdress this regarding some of those concerns that were expressed? Thank you. If you could please state your name, that would be great.
Good evening, and thank you for listening to us this evening. My name is Sister Karen Carlson. I'm a member of the community of the Servants of the Holy Heart of Mary, one of the backers for President's Covenant Community Medical Center. Since I moved here 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I've been involved with the homeless community and doing outreach to help people improve their station in life. One of the things that I've noticed over the 2 years, that there's basically no place for women during the winter time or any other time of the year to find shelter. The young lady was just talking, so what's it going to do for us? It's going to get people off the street. She states that there is already an element in the neighborhood where there's shootings and things. It's that way without the shelter. The shelter is going to enable women to improve their lives, to reach out to those organizations and resources that are available to make a better life for themselves and hopefully for their children. I do not see a problem or even look at doing anything as far as changing the structure that is there. I am working with my community to buy the property as it is and then turn it into a shelter. I don't see that we are, or the occupants could be a detriment to anyone. That house standing empty is much more likely to become infested with drug dealers or any number of other things if it continues to stand empty. Tearing it down would be extremely expensive, and we all know that the state keeps cutting funding. Rebuilding would not be an option, or making it bigger than what it already is. I empathize with the women who were here this evening to have their voices heard. I would welcome the opportunity to talk to them and allay their concerns. I've already talked with the director at the Crisis Nursery and about her concerns about what's going to happen there. Is there going to be 24/7 care and supervision for all the women that live there? Definitely so. It wouldn't be a shelter, it wouldn't be a safe place if there wasn't somebody there to oversee what is going on and to guide the women as they look forward to building their lives and becoming more self-sufficient. So their Crisis Nursery is a little less apprehensive about there being a bunch of women who may or if the place wasn't supervised, have men coming in there. That's not going to happen. And building it bigger isn't going to happen. We want to use it as it is. If you have too many people in a facility, it takes away from the amount of time you can spend with, say, the 8 women that we're envisioning being there and guiding them in whatever their future holds for them. Thank you.
Do we have, if you hold on, you have a question? Mr. Hopkins?
You said there's 24/7 supervision?
Yes.
So there's a staff person in residence?
What we're looking to do is to have a staff person there. If I have to do it myself for a while until we find someone, that can be arranged.
But
my
my question is in residence.
In residence.
So one of the bedrooms is for a staff person?
One of the rooms will have, what we're planning on is one of the rooms being divided would have a bed for a staff person and an office offset.
In addition to the 8 people? I'm a little confused. Okay.
Yes, in addition to the 8 people. I'm working, or once we have approval to do this, we're going to be looking at U of I social work interns to come in, provide counseling, case management, instruction, budgeting people from the finance department, so that we're covering all the bases that help people grow and live better and know how to take care of themselves financially as well as structurally.
Okay, it's a different kind of question, and you may not be the one to answer this. Can you tell me where the other 3 existing See You at Home houses are? Okay, I can ask somebody when she's up.
No, I do not know where they are.
Any further questions for Sister Carlson? No. Mr. Storr?
I can't think of I'm having a little difficulty with this. I am kind of concerned about what Mr. Fell raised and the lady raised. What you said that this house is planned on. You're wanting to use it as it is for the foreseeable future. Have you thought beyond what it might? Have you thought beyond the current planned use?
It would be wonderful if there's never going to be a homeless person. I don't see that ever coming to light, at least not in my lifetime. Our focus right now is turning that into a place where women have a safe place to go and can build on their lives, and we can provide them with the structure to do that.
Will the 3 parking places be adequate to accommodate the visiting students from the university? And what sort of visitors do you anticipate might come to this house, and in what frequency? Thank you.
Visitors, I would imagine that some of these women will have family in the area that may want to come to visit them. As far as parking, I walk to and from. I live a block away from it. So looking at the property, I think there could be a gravel drive or parking area put in that would accommodate at least 3 places, maybe more, for people to park. And working for the hospital, I can always impose on the CEO if I have to.
Mr. Storr, any further questions? Phyllis? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There, you did have the one question that, oh, no, we wanted to direct it. No, you're good? Okay. All right, anyone else care to address the Plan Commission?
Could I request
Yeah, that's
so
what
that I
I
can
thought
get
you
an
wanted
answer
to
to
do.
my question?
Ms. Jackson?
Could you come forward again so I think you may be able to answer the question I had? So my question was, you said you already have 3, I think, facilities?
Correct.
Can you tell me where they are?
They're all in the city of Champaign in undisclosed residential neighborhoods.
Okay. And I understand that point.
This is as
Can you
public as I ever want this address to be. We keep the addresses private for the sake of the folks staying there.
Right, no, and it makes sense. Can you give me some clue about whether they are northwest in a similar neighborhood or in very different neighborhoods, or?
They're in 2 different types of neighborhoods,
Okay,
2 different economic classes.
okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I guess we'll close the public hearing portion of this case and starts with some discussion. Anybody have something they want to bring to light? Issues, concerns, statements of one way or the other?
Question for
Phil?
staff, maybe irrelevant. Was staff aware that they were going to have any residential supervisor there living?
Not one that would be not one that would be living there. No, that wasn't quite our
But,
conversations.
We can no longer ask the petitioner, but I assume that was one of the 8 people living there, or?
No, or at least as far as the parking concerned, or
Any
No.
concern, I
the
guess.
8 people living there, we were under the impression were going to be the people that they were servicing. So.
Yeah, my impression was she said it would be in addition to the 8, so we're talking 9.
So yeah, that caught me by surprise.
We always knew it was 9, however. Our report does indicate that it would be 8 residents plus 1 staffer, so whether or not the person lives there was not part of our conversation. However, it was not germane to our staff recommendation, nor does it affect the parking.
So that does not affect the amount of parking that would be required?
It would meet the requirement. The parking requirement for
For a rooming house is pretty minimal.
it's 1 for every staff member for that respective shift,
It's one for every-
and 1 for every employer maximum shift, and then 1 for every 4 members of the service-dependent population.
So 3 would
So 3 will still do it.
potentially
Yeah.
be adequate parking, okay.
So there's, there's also a question of if there is actually a 9th resident person, are the floor areas per person sufficient? Because you computed them and reported that they were sufficient based on 8 people. And I guess what I would say, rather than worrying too much about actually answering that question, is my sense is that they weren't actually in sync. That the question of whether there's a resident person was actually different from whether there's a person staffing it 24/7. And I think maybe they didn't get the distinction. But that can all be figured out, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not just the parking, it's,
They will obviously need to meet building code, so that's what they'll
yeah,
need.
right, exactly.
I have sort of a follow-up. What's the limit of number of parking spaces you can have before you're not allowed to back out onto the street? And in this lot, it seems like the only feasible place they have to park is along the east side of the lot, which is a front yard. So they're going to have to pave essentially half of their lot to be able to legally park on it.
The
east side of the lot?
Well, I don't think they can come in from the north side.
Yeah, the east frontage on.
Oh, the east frontage, okay, yes. And the
So if
south.
they're putting 3 spaces in there, even if they come in the north side, they're gonna have to pull in and be able to turn cars around, which takes a lot of space, or they're gonna have to park basically like Crisis Nursery does, only off the east side of their lot, but that's a front yard and they can't, so they're gonna have to pull in 20 feet off of their property line to be able to legally park there.
That's one reason why we have the condition that requires them to have a parking, a plan that accommodates that if they're unable to provide off-street parking that meets our zoning code.
That's one of the questions that I had about the staff's recommendation, and I think it leads right into the line of questions that we're going on now. The first condition was that the site plan conforms to the general layout as submitted in this application. We don't have a site plan. We've got a drawing of the house with office bedroom written on it, but we don't have a site plan. So condition number 1 can't be satisfied because we don't have one. So I think that's kind of where our concerns are coming from, is where exactly is this parking going to go? How are you going to make it work? You could. I think Mr. Feld brings up some of the ways
Well,
that it could work.
I mean,
Maybe it
I'm
could-
going into opinion, I guess, but I wouldn't be opposed to them asking for a zoning variance to be able to park in their front yard because there's no one, I mean, there's a house to the east of them that I guess maybe it would affect, but they could ask for a zoning variance to park in their front yard in this particular lot, which I guess would be appropriate, I would say, but.
Why can't they park in the south?
It is a south.
They can, but I'll go back and put my architect hat on, is in Urbana, if your lot is on a corner, you have 2 front yards, and you're not allowed to park in your front yard. You can drive over your front yard, but you can't park in it. And I don't know what the setback is here, but it's probably 25 feet, 20 feet. So
On
the
R4?
east,
I don't know.
the east 20 feet of their lot, they could drive over, but they can't park there. So a car that's coming in from the east side is going to, the face of that car is going to be 3/4 of the way through their lot to legally park.
Yeah, so Mr. Storer, in the block, the south part is also the east part, which is the front yard off of Matthews, is the problem. So Mr. Fells say they're going to have to pull all the way to the west side, I guess.
Well, they're going to have to get the back end, or
Right.
the end of their car is going to have to be whatever the setback is off of that property line to legally park there.
Yeah. So.
And maybe, perhaps we're making way more of this than we need to.
Any other, I just wanted to clarify the point about, that Mr. Hopkins asked about Crisis Nursery, which is not necessarily germane, but is kind of a precedent for this area. So that's a daycare and therefore a conditional use, is that correct?
It's a daycare center that provides some other social services, but
Right,
yes, it's conditional.
You
Yeah.
said its primary use is daycare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure of that. Any other comments or concerns or questions? Mr. Hopkins?
We've got 2 things here. We've got a zoning case and we've got a
Absolutely.
special use permit. This special use permit has the problem that we refer to a site plan that we don't have.
Right.
So
I-
that seems to me problematic.
Yeah.
We need to reword something if we're going to act on it, or we need to get a site plan.
Agreed.
And we may be able to figure out a way around that ourselves. For the zoning case, my reaction is that it, on the face of it, looks odd. But given the ownership of the property and of the set of property on 2 blocks, and given that the floor area ratio for R4 is, what, 0.5 or 0.55, 0.5? And the floor area ratio for R2 is 0.4. If on this lot, which ironically helps us by rezoning only this lot, you tried to build something new under R4, it couldn't be very big anyway. It wouldn't be what people think of as an apartment building, because it might have 4 units max if there was some clever way to do it. And the height difference is, I think, 5 feet or something. It's, say what? It's the same?
We'll look at the footnotes, but on the surface, it's the same maximum height of 35 feet.
Yeah, okay. So, in an odd sort of way, what seems on the face of it a weird rezoning, I think actually works for these sort of counterintuitive reasons. So I'm comfortable with the zoning. I haven't figured out a way to deal with the site plan question yet. And I'm trying to think whether we can devise a site plan statement about parking that will be sufficient.
I think we can adequately say that they have to meet all the zoning requirements under the zoning ordinance, and how they do that is up to them. I mean, they're within, back up a little bit, they can pave their whole yard if they want. That's legal to do that. So they can meet the zoning ordinance
Right.
however they want to, I believe.
And I'm not, that's the kind of thing that I'm not sure we have to say it. I mean, they have to
Well,
do that
it-
anyway.
Right.
In that case, I think that, this is what I was trying to figure out. I think we delete from the statement, the site plan, the statement that says in conformance with the site plan.
Yeah,
I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, that's exactly what it says. General, what the usual language that you guys use. General,
So delete that phrase.
condition number 1. Site conforms to the general layout as submitted in this application.
Okay, so I will now make, we should make separate motions, or we
I
want to
think
handle
we
them
should,
together?
let's make separate motions
Okay.
because,
So,
you know.
first, we got to rezone it.
yeah.
So, I move we send plan case number 2259 M15 to City Council with a recommendation of approval.
Moved by Mr. Hopkins, second by Ms. Bynum. If we could have a roll call whenever you're ready.
Mr. Chair, before you do that, can I just clarify about the condition as it states currently, the site conforms to the general layout as submitted in this application, that you determined is fine, or did you?
Actually, we're not on that one yet.
We're on the zoning.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
Let me know when you get there.
Yeah.
Mr. Fell,
Yes?
Mr. Fitch,
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Storr,
Yes.
and Ms. Bynum.
Yes.
That motion passes. And now for the second plan case, which is 2260 SU15. This is the special use permit. And I believe Mr. Hopkins, your suggestion was to,
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, so somebody else could make the motion. I mean, it's permitted, but,
you're designated. He's got it. Oh, yeah, it's down there.
okay, where's?
Commissions.
At the bottom of page 8.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it read. Yeah, okay. So, I move plan case 2260 SU15 to send to City Council the recommendation approval without condition 1.
May I?
Ms. Pearson.
I should point out that it actually reads slightly differently than it usually does. It reads, "The site conforms to the general layout as submitted in this application." It does not refer to a site plan. So the layout would include the floor plan that's shown, as well as potentially, we would include the aerial, which shows the existing building.
Noted. Thank you. Yeah,
Can we,
sure, Mr.
can we
Feld.
discuss? I think we still
No,
need,
we've got a motion.
Well, we don't, because we don't have a second.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
That's what I'm wondering about.
Are we good?
Does anybody care to second the motion, then we can proceed the discussion?
I have a question.
I'm going to second the motion.
Okay, I
So,
was gonna
so the
do,
motion's on the table.
okay.
Okay.
Moved by Mr. Hopkins, seconded by Mr. Fitch.
my opinion is we still strike that because conforming to the layout we have has no parking on it. So
Yeah.
I think we still need to cut it out of there. Because if they're conforming to the general layout that we have, the layout we have has no parking spaces on it.
Ms. Bynum, did you have,
No, you took care of my
got it?
question.
Yeah, okay.
So-
Mr. Hopkins.
My other question is, the drawings we have are of the building. But from a special use permit point of view, are we trying to constrain them to that building layout plan for any reason? Different from meeting building codes and zoning regulations?
Question for staff. If we approve that, can they add on to the building under the, so what extent can they remodel the
But
building?
that's in condition two.
Condition 2 says, yeah, the site is not redeveloped to a higher density, and the home does not exceed the maximum allowable occupancy of 8 residents and 1 staffer as proposed in this application.
Does that mean they can't put on a kitchen addition?
The way it's worded.
No, they're not increasing the capacity, they're just remodeling
I
their
don't-
kitchen.
I think
Or
they
adding
could-
a porch, or.
They could probably do something like that.
I think we need to leave them the latitude to be able to improve their property, I'll say.
It says the site is not redeveloped to a higher density. It doesn't say they can't add.
Right.
So they
Or
could,
remodel.
they could remodel it and put an addition on as long as they don't add more people to it?
I think that's one of the reasons the condition, the first condition was included.
I guess I don't get what layout, what the general layout submitted is referring to.
The general layout is referring to just the existing footprint of the building and the use that would be occupying that building and the cohabitation that would be happening upstairs and downstairs to make sure that it's not violating building codes and as well and that it's the use within that building is compliant with the zoning codes. And that's generally what is meant by the layout, to say that the people living in this house will end this house as it is with some minor structural improvements, that the footprint and the intensity of the use will not exceed what is proposed to maintain its compatibility and
Okay.
with the
So-
neighborhood.
So my reaction is, point 2 does a better job at that. And in a way, I'd rather they have the flexibility to meet point 1 in ways potentially different from that drawing, which is a little bit bizarre, to put it lightly. Because they have to meet code in doing so. So the occupancy is in point 2, which is crucial, and the site redevelopment is in point 2. That's crucial. I still think it's better, as I proposed the motion, to delete point 1. That's, that's my point.
I'm actually going to go the other way a little bit, is I think, and I'm sorry to entangle it more, but it almost leaves them too little freedom to improve their property if, I mean, it's obviously not brand-new condition property, and they may get in there and find they need to improve their property some way, which may be better off for them to, maybe their garage is an attached garage, or when we've limited what they can do to improve their piece of property.
No,
I don't
How?
see it that way necessarily. It does say specifically occupancy,
this is
Right.
going-
yeah.
But the second one says that they can't, as I read it, and maybe I'm wrong, is they can't add on to their property at all. And I'm not saying they want to, but they can add onto their property not for the intent of raising the occupancy of it.
Right, that does say that.
Can they,
Well, but that's specifically what this says. The site is not redeveloped to a higher density. And the home does not
as I
exceed
understood
the
staff,
allowable occupancy.
they can't add on to it, right? Is that true or not true?
I'm sorry, that was in reference to condition number 1. So,
Okay, so if they wanted to, for instance, enlarge their kitchen and put a 10 by 15 addition on it, as long as it conformed to the zoning ordinance, they can still do that?
without condition number 1, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as they don't go to 10 people.
Is that a good thing?
That's a good thing.
All right. Anybody else? We do have a motion on the table. I don't know if there's further discussion, or Mr. Storr?
Could you clarify, are we keeping number 1 or not?
Under the current motion, number 1 is not being kept.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I think we're ready for a roll call on the motion.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes?
Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. Storr?
Yes.
Ms. Bynum?
Yes.
Mr. Fell?
Yes.
That motion passes. And this, do you have a date for city council on this? These two?
July 13th.
July 13th. Thank you very much for that presentation. And now we will resume with the agenda. And we don't have any old business. We do have a new public hearing. Plan case numbers 2261 M15 and 2015 A01. Request by Green Vistas LLC, DGS Properties, and Stark Excavating to rezone an 8.35 acre tract at 3106 North Cunningham Avenue from Champaign County B4 General Business to City Industrial Light as part of an annexation agreement.
Good evening.
Mr. Mahalik, welcome.
One sec. So, as noted, this annexation agreement will include a remapping proposal, or excuse me, rezoning proposal from County B4 to City IN1. Now, before I begin, I just wanted to note one correction to the memorandum, and it's a very small correction. There's one line in the introductory portion that states that Green Vistas LLC and DGS Properties LLC are affiliates, but they are in fact not affiliates. Now, this correction doesn't impact the proposed agreement in any way, so I just wanted to note that and establish those relationships correctly. Also, I'd like to add that we do have representatives joining us this evening from Stark Excavating that might be able to provide more detailed answers in regards to some of the more technical questions, if any do come up later on.
So you're saying specifically that the line near the bottom of page 1 that says Green Vistas has agreed to sell it to DGS, and then in parentheses, also an affiliate of Mervis Industries? Is that the part that is
That is
inaccurate?
incorrect.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
The parcel we are focusing on in the proposed agreement is a unused lot at 3106 North Cunningham, which is located between Oaks Road and Airport Road on the east side of Cunningham. And here in Exhibit D, I have a picture of the lot. It was the former home of an adult establishment that has since been closed, and due to a change in state law, or an update in state law, they will no longer be able to reopen there. The parcel was the subject of an annexation agreement with Mervis Industries that was approved in 2012. However, Mervis was never the owner of record for that lot, and now that 2012 agreement is considered invalid. Under the proposed agreement, the parcel would be rezoned from County B4 General Business to City IN1. Also under the agreement, the current owner of the lot, Green Vistas, who has owned the lot since 2010, would sell the lot to a developer, DGS Properties. DGS Properties would then lease the site to Stark Excavating, which would utilize it for several different uses. These uses include aggregate recycling and related sales, as well as the manufacture and sale of both asphalt and concrete ready mix. Those uses would be allowed under one special use permit issued to Stark Excavating. The proposed agreement would also provide Stark Excavating with a conditional use permit that would allow for the use of a construction yard. Exhibit A shows us the location of the lot, and I realized looking at the map this evening that this aerial is a little bit outdated. To the south, we now have a recycling center that is operated by Mervis Industries, and that would be this lot just here to the south. Meanwhile, to the north, we have a lot that is utilized by an excavator. To the east and west, we have agricultural uses. In Exhibit B, we see that the lots to the south and the west of the subject property are within the city at the moment, and they are zoned IN1, light industrial and office. And here on page 1 of Exhibit C, we see the subject property highlighted in light blue, and this map illustrates the future land use designations for the property. The western portion of the property is designated in the Urbana Comprehensive Plan as a regional business area, and the eastern portion of lot is designated for a residential use. Exhibit F is an enlarged version of the general site plan for the subject property. There is an existing 5,378 square foot building on the property, which can be seen here. It's this rectangle here, which will be renovated and utilized only for indoor storage. Meanwhile, a 1,125 square foot garage, which is this rectangle here, would be demolished. 2 small control sheds would be on the subject property, one at the scale area and one at the plant area. And these 2 small sheds, combined with the existing structure to be renovated, would only make for a FAR of 0.015, which is far below the maximum allowed 2 FAR in the IN1 district. A roughly 14,700 square foot parking lot located near the entrance of the lot would provide sufficient parking. Stark Excavating's planned production and recycling plans would be compatible with the recycling center located to the south of the subject property. The concrete products would be prepared in a central mixing drum or a dry batch tower, and then it would be dispensed for delivery. Meanwhile, the asphalt product would similarly be loaded onto trucks for delivery. Meanwhile, aggregate recycling consists of taking materials from demolition operations, crushing them, and selling them as construction materials. They may be picked up on site or delivered to customers. Stark's planned construction yard would also be compatible with the construction yard equipment sales center located to the north of the property. This yard would provide for storage for materials, temporary construction of office trailers, and equipment for use on off-site projects. So just looking at this site plan, this proposed plant area is where we have the production operations and recycling operations proposed. Oh, excuse me. Actually, the proposed plant area here is on the northern edge of the lot, and that's where the proposed asphalt and concrete production is set to be located. And then we have the proposed recycling area, and then we have 2 proposed material storage areas, which are in regards to the requested conditional use permit. We also have a scale area that would be utilized to measure the weight of trucks. The parties to the agreement are restricted to the agreement's restrictions. These restrictions would also apply to any future owners or lessees of the subject property. These conditions are as follows. As a part of the agreement, the parties will be required to extend the municipal water line located to the south of the property to its northern periphery. Furthermore, the parties agree to install a culvert to catch water shedding from properties to the north. The parties will also preserve existing ditches to convey water east to west. DGS Properties and Stark Excavating will be required to utilize the existing driveway located on the lot, and also agrees to pave all parking lots, access drives, off-street loading areas, and parking spaces with a hard surface. The only unpaved areas will be those utilized for material storage, and they will need to be treated with dust control measures. Both parties also agree to follow all regulations applied on a local, state, and federal level, including environmental and operational controls as enforced by the IEPA. A landscaping plan must be submitted to the city prior to development, and all zoning ordinance requirements must be met. The proposed uses are not expected to have a negative impact on the neighbors to the property. One moment, just move back up to the map. The operations restrictions as applied by current regulations and within the agreement minimize the creation of dust and noise. The proposed uses will also match the commercial and industrial character of the stretch of Cunningham Avenue. In a broader picture, the proposed agreement will help to enhance or expand the city's tax base, and the proposed uses will serve as the type of regional business that the 2005 comprehensive plan calls for along Cunningham Avenue. It is important to determine if the proposed rezoning in this agreement matches the factors established in the case of LaSalle National Bank versus Cook County. These factors are paramount in evaluating the legal validity of a zoning classification for a particular property. An explanation of, or a statement of each criteria and the explanation of the proposed agreement's relationship with that criteria does follow. 1. The existing land uses and zoning of the nearby property. The proposed light industrial / office zoning is consistent with Stark Excavating's planned uses. The proposed rezoning is intended to bring the use of the tract into conformance with the zoning of the properties located to the south and the west. The surrounding area is a mix of usage which are compatible with the proposed uses. 2. The extent to which property values are diminished by the restrictions created from rezoning to City IN1. A direct conversion from the current zoning of County B4 General Business would result in a city zoning of B3 General Business, which is the default conversion. However, this would not accommodate Stark's planned uses. Should the subject property not be rezoned as requested, Stark would not be unable to utilize the property as planned. The next two criteria are really interrelated. 3, the extent to which the ordinance promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. And 4, the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed on the individual property. The proposed rezoning will not jeopardize the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. The agreement provides for all necessary controls to minimize any impact the proposed uses will have. Should the rezoning be denied, there will be no relative gain to the public. 5, the suitability of the subject property for the zoned purposes. The site is generally suited for development. The property has access to the sewer, and the parties agree to extend the municipal water line to the northern periphery of the property. And 6, the length of time the property has been vacant as zoned considered in its local context. The property has been vacant since spring of 2009 when an adult entertainment establishment that was located there closed. Due to state law, a new adult entertainment use cannot be established there. The Plan Commission has the following options in this combined case. You may forward this case to council with a recommendation to approve the proposed annexation agreement, including a zoning designation of IN1 light industrial office for the subject property, or you can approve with conditions. If you approve with conditions, I ask that you articulate those conditions, or C, you can deny the proposed annexation agreement. Considering the findings in this memorandum, staff recommends approval of the proposed annexation agreement as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Mahalik. Any questions for Mr. Mahalik? Mr. Fell?
I assume neighboring properties were notified, and since we have no correspondence, no objections?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Storr?
Could you reiterate stormwater provisions, since so much of the area will be paved?
Yes, so we worked with our in Public Works Division to ensure that stormwater controls were addressed. Let me just move to my section here. Moment. So, firstly, a culvert will be installed to catch water shedding properties to the north. Let me just zoom in here. And now those, actually, I believe on the most current site plan, we actually might have that. Let me zoom out. I could be wrong. I believe it's this blue line. Now, I could be wrong, and we may have to confirm that with the representatives from Stark Excavating. Oh, proposed culvert. Look at that. It's that blue vertical line. And that was reviewed by Public Works Division. And furthermore, the existing ditches that convey water east to west along the property will have to be preserved. And that was also recommended by our Public Works Division. And in their consideration, those two conditions within the agreement ensure proper management of stormwater.
Great. Mr. Toy, anything further on that?
I see that there's collection, but there's no storage. Where does the water go after it's collected?
There is a stream located to the east of the subject property. I'm not sure of the name. I do know that it is there. I don't even know if you want to really call it a stream, but it is where runoff collects. It is seen here on the aerial. And I believe that under the opinion of our Public Works Division, that was going to be integrated into the stormwater management.
Okay, will the increased runoff cause a problem for the owner of that field? Yes.
At this stage, what the Public Works Department requests is the general idea that stormwater will be addressed. The details will be engineered later and will meet our subdivision code.
And I don't obviously want to speak for the Public Works Division. Their approvals will come down the road when they come to the permitting process.
Right. We had this case recently before you joined the Plan Commission. And as part of the subdivision, they had to submit a stormwater management plan that is approved by the city. So.
I presented that case.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. And in fact, we had problems with that because their plan didn't meet with the city's approval. And they worked on it and were able then to get something that did meet with the city's approval. So, Mr. Fell.
It's kind of a related point, but I assume also as part of their stormwater management and EPA regulations, we're watching what they're doing to the agricultural properties?
All EPA regulations must be enforced, and I do know that that Stark and the developer are working with the EPA at the moment in regards to permits for their operations, and that EPA is aware of this project. So I would assume, obviously I can't speak for them, that in regards to any negative impacts that the project might have on surrounding properties would be minimized through current regulations.
Okay. Further questions? Thank you, Mr. Mahalik. Yeah, hold it. What?
Which way does that stream to the north run? Is that run through the property to the south, or is it run from the south through the property to the north?
Yeah, okay.
I believe the representatives from Stark can provide the more detailed answers.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mahalik.
Thank you.
Do the petitioner care to address the Plan Commission at this time? At least to answer the one question. So if you could come forward, and maybe we'll have others. You never know. We got an inquisitive.
line waiting out in the hallway.
Yeah.
Here, I just want to leave this up for you guys. There you go.
And if you could just state your names for the record, that'd be great.
My name's Brad Jameson. This is Jason Westmiller. We represent Stark Excavating and DGS Properties.
Great. Thank you.
Max did an excellent job portraying, our intended uses of the property. I don't really know if we need to say, a lot more. We have met with the Saline Branch Drainage Commissioners on site, which some of the commissioners are actually also the farmers to the east, the adjacent landowners. So they're actually welcoming us in this arrangement as we can improve their drainage tile as part of our project too.
The Saline Branch Drainage District has not sure if it's an 18-inch or a 24-inch field tile that goes through this property we want to annex, and it's currently choked up in a lot of places with tree roots. Part of our improvement of the property is going to be some clearing, and we're going to work with the Saline Branch to fix this tile and get it repaired so that they actually, Mac Weichel is the landowner directly to the east, and he's the one we'll work with, and we've met with him, to get a plan together. So if this works for us, we'll get to work and get that improved, because right now it's choked up with some tree roots. The stream that you're asking about flows through the property heading to the southwest. And it actually comes onto the property and almost makes comes in from the northeast and then heads directly west through a culvert that's underneath Cunningham Avenue. But a lot of that is, currently a lot of that's somewhat choked up with some trees and stuff. And any of our operations, we're going to clear it out and improve the drainage actually.
Great, thank you for that. Any further questions for the petitioners this time? I think we're good, gentlemen. Thank you. All right, I'll close the public hearing portion of this, and we'll go into discussion. Anybody have any thoughts? Ms. Bindum?
I guess my only concern would be for the comprehensive plan for future land use. How do we generally handle that? Because it says it wants it to be residential, and then this was kind of light industrial.
Actually, that's a really nice pickup, because I noticed that myself. And I think there's been times where we've been stricter about that than we are at other times. I think one of the questions that I was going to get clarity on this point too was that I can't find it. It's in the packet, isn't it? The problem with this, I think the problem is, in this case, for me, is with the strategic plan, because it cuts through this parcel. If you look, the back part of the parcel is in the residential part, and the front part is in what's envisioned as regional business. So here you've got something in the plan that really cuts on a jagged edge through an existing parcel. So I think that's an excellent question on your part. For me, the plan is probably, in this case, in error. Or just the shading is off, if maybe if you want to look at it that way. I don't know if city staff knows anything about that or not.
Yes, actually, there is one note within the comprehensive plan, and I'm not sure where, but I've read it before. There's an annotation that states that our designations do not match property lines, but these are more.
True, yeah. True.
Yep.
And I think sometimes when we've looked at these cases in the past, if it matched the property lines and the request was to do something that the plan didn't envision, we've kind of stuck with the plan. You know what and other times where we look at the thing and it says, well, that doesn't really make sense for that property now, whereas it did 10 years ago, and then we've gone the other way. So that's a real good question. I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on it.
Kind of a question. Is this all currently one piece of property?
Yes.
So to me, it's kind of like something being in the Boneyard District. You can have 1 square inch of your property in the Boneyard District and it's all in, right? So if you're 1 square inch in the conforming to the comprehensive plan, you're all in my opinion.
Let's put that in the zoning ordinance. So that's a really good question, Mr. Hopkins.
So the logic of the plan is to give rough indications of relationships. And the outline is actually regional business, not industrial. I'll come to that in a minute. But the way it's drawn is based, in the 2005 plan, is based largely on what was already there. But the implication is that that corridor is thought of as being a regional business corridor. So how deep a given lot is, or how large a given parcel is not really taken into account in the plan. And so I don't see this as being countered to the intent of Cunningham Avenue being regional business. There's an additional interpretation, which is industrial as regional business.
I'm trying to get to that right now.
But the, my take on that is that this and the Mervis Recycling Center are the end of the runway. And the notion that you're going to put a big box store or something like that there is not going to happen. And given that there's an excavator north of it and a recycling center south of it, I don't think this use is sort of counter to the idea of what would happen on North Cottingham Avenue. It's also the case that Urbana has its big box corridor on Philo Road at East Main Street, and we should not want another one. So if this, is seen as being a problem if you're trying to attract regional business like big box stores, I don't see that as a problem. So I don't see this as inconsistent with the intent of the plan.
Yeah, just for point of clarity, that there are two different future land use descriptions. Regional business is distinct from light industrial and office. The regional business talks about large-scale big box stores to smaller-scale buildings and outlet business opportunities. The industrial mentions, industrial uses as well as professional and business services. I think that in a light industrial, I would agree with you, there's often a lot of overlap. You get what might be termed regional businesses, I suppose, could locate in there. You might be termed the proposed use here to be a regional business, not by zoning, but by practical application. It is a business that will serve the region. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I agree with you. I'm not too hung up on that. But it's worth discussing and noting. So, anything further? That's a lot of silence. Silence usually leads to emotion, in my experience.
What kind of residential structures were they thinking of having in that area?
I don't think the plan is that specific as to what kinds of structures it would be. If it was going to butt right up against a regional commercial center, I would presume it would probably be some kind of multifamily use, then kind of with the intensity going down to a duplex or single-family use as you got further away from the commercial. But I don't think the plan is really that specific. So when residential comes there and it's adjacent to this commercial area, it probably will be multifamily in some form. But you don't know for sure. Yeah. Anything further?
So this is one case, or this is two cases?
This
I'm
is
confused.
two cases. One is a rezone, and another one is the annexation agreement that contains the special and conditional use permits and all the conditions that city staff have placed on the development. So we probably should handle it like we did the last one, because the annexation agreement can't go unless the rezone goes.
But we don't normally make recommendations on annexation agreements. So we're actually making a recommendation about a special use permit that's required in the annexation?
That's interesting.
The consideration tonight is that, from my understanding, and Lori might have a correction for me, is the remapping is the most pertinent item tonight. However, the remapping is wrapped into that agreement, and thus approval of the agreement ensures approval of the remapping. And in the boilerplate language that we've been using in the past few annexation agreements, they've been combined as one case item for the recommendation. But I don't know if that's something we might change to be a little more clear on in the future. But that's what we've been using recently, and so that's why I adapted, but obviously we can take it a different way.
I don't know if I want to rip it into parts.
No, I want to
Yeah.
make it as simple as possible. I'm just trying to figure out.
What exactly are we advising? What's our recommendation going to pertain to? Yeah.
Somebody else could make the motion, and that would speed things up.
I'll be happy to do it, but I didn't know how we want to do it.
Well, we can start with the zone. Let's start with the rezone and work on that. Does anybody want to make a motion on the zoning?
I could move to approve the rezoning.
Okay, what's the
From,
case number?
2015-A-01/2261-M-15.
It's just the first part of that.
Oh,
Yeah, they combine them both. So I believe he's moving 2261 M15. Request to rezone the property from B4 to City IN1.
oh, you're
Yeah.
right.
Motion by
Good
Mr.
catch.
Storr, second by Mr. Fell. So we can have a roll call on that when you get the chance.
Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. Storr?
Yes.
Ms. Bindum?
Yes.
Mr. Fell?
Yes.
And Mr. Fitch?
Yes? That motion is approved. Now the annexation agreement.
Do we have the text of the annexation
We do.
agreement?
We do. And that's the whereases, and then the substance comes later.
So there's actually nothing, there's no special use or conditional use or other conditions in the annexation
Yeah,
agreement?
actually they are. That's just the beginning. So here's the special use.
Oh.
Yeah. And then the conditional use follows, and then the conditions that were further placed on the development.
Yeah, okay.
You good?
That's
Yeah,
what I
it's
thought.
a good.
But
Yeah.
what we are really doing is recommending approval of the special use permit that at the moment is presented to us as part of the annexation, because we don't have any authority over the annexation agreement itself.
So our motion could say we are.
Well, I mean, given that it's set up this way,
That's fine, yeah.
we can just do it.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to figure out is what
What
are
are
we
we
actually
doing?
doing? And we are approving a special use permit that is described in this annexation
Yeah.
agreement.
You comfortable now, Mr. Fell?
Yeah, I guess. I will move to approve plan case number, this one's 2015-A-01
Yeah.
for approval.
Okay, recommendation, motion by Mr. Fell,
Second?
seconded by Mr. Hopkins. Roll call whenever you're ready, please.
Mr. Storr?
Yes.
Ms. Bindum?
Yes.
Mr. Fell?
Yes.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
That motion passes. And are we looking at July 13th on this one as well?
Yes.
July 13th. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. Okay, concluding the agenda, we have no new business, no audience participation as the audience is departing the room. Participate some more? Yeah. All right, thanks. Staff report.
None.
Oh, okay. No staff report, no study session. We are adjourned.